different terms. Really looking forward to this.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's, can everybody hear me well? Yeah? Good. So, first of all, I would like to say thank you to Simon. I think we should have a round of applause for Simon. Today's been absolutely brilliant. It's been so engaging and so interesting to exchange ideas and hear about everybody's research. And it really makes me excited for the next year and coming forward and seeing how everybody's research develops. So thank you, Simon, and thank you to everybody else like Agnieszka and the workers who've cleaned for us and who've made our food and everybody who's put this together. So my name's Victoria, and I'm very blessed to work with Professor Heather Hughes on the Reimagining Lincolnshire project. And I would just like to say that I'm sure you're all desperate to be in the sunshine. So this will be a very light intellectually light presentation compared to some of the presentations that we've had earlier today. But one thing I would like to say is that if you listen and if you open your hearts and if you open your minds to my words and to the stories that I'm going to tell you, then I believe that when you go and walk out in the sunshine and when you go and walk around the city of Lincoln, you are going to feel very differently about our city and about our place and about its meaning to you and its meaning to the world. So, what do we do? So, Reimagining Lincolnshire is a public history project, and we're mainly volunteer-led, except for me. I get some money. But we have lots of volunteers from all sorts of walks of life within the county. And we have been trying to explore Lincolnshire's diverse heritage and marginalised stories. And we're doing this through also engaging with local people and organisations. And I'm sure you all sort of know that Lincoln and Lincolnshire's diverse history has continually been overlooked. We get the churches, we get the militarist history, but we don't really get a lot of marginalised stories about Black and brown people, LGBTQ+ people. But when we uncover and celebrate the marginalised and forgotten stories of our city's past, then that is a step towards building a more inclusive future. So I'd like to say that then public space can become a bridge. And it can become a bridge not just between our interactions with each other and our interactions with the space, but also a site where differences are celebrated and we can break down barriers and have conversations with each other. So I just a quick side note that this presentation will cover the whole county, not just Lincoln. But the stories I will tell you will help to reimagine your sense of space within Lincoln and within our campus. And I think that's important because it's very important as a civic university with our one community values that our institutional foundations are based on the history and heritage around us from all walks of life. So, what am I going to do with you all? So I'm going to do a quiz. And through this quiz, I will take you on a journey through the county, through history. And I also hope to break down any misconceptions that you might have about where we live. So, please, when we start to go through, begin to think what you know about Lincoln's diverse history, why you have those thoughts, who's missing from your thoughts, why they might be missing from your thoughts, and how that can really be addressed by us as a collective. So, question number 1. Does anybody know who these people are, by any chance? Silence. Footballers, brilliant. So you may not know, but Lincoln City Football Club was one of the first football club, and it was the first football club to hire two black football players, when most of the country had no black players. So here we have Willie Clark, and here we have Johnny Walker. Unfortunately, this is the other thing that you have to bear in mind. When we think about our diverse history, the images that we get are not, when you're not a rich white man, your pictures are going to be more blurry or not there. So that's why Johnny Walker's like this. But when was this? Can anybody guess? 1890. Brilliant!
What?
You get to buy me a drink at the park. Amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. So, and I will explain about this further in the conversation. It's further in the presentation. So here we have the handsome Billy Strachan, and we have here Ralph Ottey. So Billy Strachan, or Heather told me how to say it in a Scottish way, strong. I don't know how to. He was an RAF pilot, and here we have Ralph Ottey, who was in Boston, Lincolnshire, a cricket legend. Can anybody tell me what they have in common?
I can, I'm not allowed.
Okay. Well, you don't get to buy me a drink. Okay. So, I'll tell you later. So, you might know that this month is Gypsy Roma Traveller Month. And this beautiful Gypsy Roma, well, it's actually a Roma wagon, was taken somewhere. Can anybody guess where it was taken?
Where the picture was taken.
Where the picture was taken?
Circus?
Nope.
Lincolnshire Line?
Nope.
On the campus.
Nope.
Lincolnshire.
Correct.
Some museum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll come to it. So this beautiful piece of art by Duncan Grant is a mural in a chapel in the Lincoln Cathedral. What about this picture do you think meant that the chapel was closed off for a number of years to the public and used as a broom cupboard?
The whiff of homoeroticism.
Brilliant! That's brilliant. Well done. Yeah. So, yeah, and I'll explain about that further. Right, so here we have the legends Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Wonder. Two of these played in Lincoln. Who didn't play in Lincoln?
Did Jimi Hendrix play in Boston?
Correct. Yeah, at the Gliderdome.
I don't know who plays in Lincoln as well.
At the Gliderdome.
It was probably Chuck Berry that
Any other ideas?
Well, it must be Stevie Wonder then.
No.
He's good at deduction, isn't he?
No, Simon doesn't get to play this game. Okay. So here we have classic Lincolnshire. We have the church, the war memorials. What do you think that this Sleaford, Grantham war memorials and the chancel at St Chad's in Dunholm have in common?
Limestone. Limestone. All made of limestone.
There's something else. Anyone want to give it a go? Move on? Okay. Well, I'll tell you the answers to the quiz that you haven't already told me. And when I tell you the answers, please think about how significant they are to Lincoln and the county's history, and how we can build an inclusive future around these stories. And I'll explain to you a bit about how we use them as tools of public engagement. But think of ideas about how we can do that further. And just to bring it back to academia, these are some of our key findings. And yeah, I think you can really engage with this. So let's have a. So the first question was about when these footballers played. So Johnny Walker over here, his father arrived in Scotland from the Caribbean in the 1870s. He was born in 1876 and his football career began in Scotland. And he was the first black footballer to command a transfer fee when he transferred to Lincoln City FC for £25 in 1899. Yeah, and also he's famous because he was the first black footballer to play both in the English League and in the Scottish League. Our other player at the Imps, Willie Clark, from Guyana, played for Lynx between 1909 and 1911. He was the first black footballer to score in the English League. But, sorry Imps fans, he scored for Villa, not for Lincoln. Those of you local to here probably know of Keith Alexander. He was a formidable force in the English League, and he was the first black football manager in the English League. So I really like you to think about what that means. I mean, this city has had these amazing firsts in black football. Do we see it around? Is it celebrated? Well, what we're trying to do at the moment is engage with Lincoln City Football Club and engage with the fans. And we are helping them build an oral history about the black footballers in their club. And the more that we do this, the more information that we're gathering. For example, we do know that another person played at Lincoln, but we're still trying to find out more information about who that was. So, what I asked was what these two gentlemen have in common. What these two gentlemen have in common is they're both Caribbean RAF veterans from World War II. And I think Ralph was World War I, wasn't he? He was World War II just, yeah. But Billy, yeah. Sorry, getting confused. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that there was over 5,000 RAF volunteers from the Caribbean in Lincolnshire. And some of them stayed. For example, here, Ralph Ottey is, if any of you have done any research about businesses, etc., in Boston, not only was he a formidable footballer, cricketer, my head's in the football, cricketer, but he was also, he's been a foundation in terms of Boston society. There's also Sydney McFarlane, who recently received an honorary doctorate from the university. And at the IBCC Digital Archive, they've also found evidence of even more people who served from far across the world, not just in the Caribbean, but Indigenous Canadians and all of these people, that we are not recognising their service. They're not memorialised. Their faces are not the first thing that you see, when you turn on Memorial Day and you turn on the telly, and you don't see these black faces. So what we're trying to do is trying to spread the word through the ways that we can. So through accessible and free exhibitions, public platforms. We had a brilliant, amazing discussion between Ralph Ottey and Sydney McFarlane that you can see on YouTube. And then we're building learning resources, and we want to engage the students at the university with this history and the general public. So the next image is from the Gordon Boswell Romany Museum in Spalding in Lincolnshire. And this museum holds the largest collection of Romany wagons in the UK. And myself and Heather were very fortunate because we were able to visit and learn from the Romany family. Unfortunately, Gordon Boswell has passed away, but his wife is still around, about the museum and about how they've been historically challenging the misconceptions that people have about the Gypsy Roma traveller community. Another aspect of Lincolnshire Gypsy Roma traveller history that you might not be aware of is the gypsy parson, George Hall, who was born in 1863 and died in 1918, and was a local advocate for gypsy, Roma and traveller. Well, they weren't rights technically in that time, but for their conditions, for their situation. And we've been collecting data and information about this. We're doing blogs this month, and in November we'll be having members. Hopefully November, it might change, but we'll be having members of this community to come to the university and engage with students. So, another aspect of reimagining Lincolnshire and how it is tied into our sense of meaning of the city of Lincoln is through our first Black History Trail. And I will tell you that the two Black performers who played in Lincoln were Chuck Berry and Jimi Hendrix. And so they both played at the ABC Cinema. And I will tell you a bit more about that. But in terms of our trail, it explores those who were emancipated. Well, actually, we have both. We have enslaved people who were emancipated, and those who also were emancipating enslaved people who spoke at the Cornhill. And we have information about Lincoln's first Black mayor, which was Ralph Tiffany in the 90s. And through the trail, we're trying to reimagine Lincoln through understanding empire and understanding our links to empire, to slavery, and also celebrating inclusion at the same time. And this is emerging as a really interesting tool because it's a way that we're able to engage with people on and off campus through different means, whether that be through leaflets, discussions, and everybody wants a piece of this trail. I mean, it's been on the radio, it's been on, we did a presentation at Lincoln County Council's Identify group, and it's really emerging as a brilliant way to reimagine our space, public space. So here was the location of ABC Cinema, and yes, so Stevie Wonder didn't play at ABC, but he did play at the Gliderdome, so he does have a Lincolnshire history. And actually, so Chuck Berry was at the ABC on the 27th of January 65, and Jimi Hendrix was there 2 years later in April 67, and he also, Jimi Hendrix did an interview with the Lincolnshire Echo, so you can look that up from April 67. So these are just also two images of other Black performers that we celebrate on the trail, including Ira Aldridge, who played at it was the Theatre Royal back then, and we also have Carlos Trower here, who tightrope walked.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which is better than tightrope fall.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the other names of who we celebrate with the trail. So another aspect that's important to us is making this research and ensuring that this research and ensuring our output and our engagement is as intersectional as possible. And intersectionality is about recognising difference, but recognising difference is not in a vacuum. It's within a structure built on years of oppression, and different people's experiences may impact how they're accessing this world, how they live their lives differently. So we ensure that our stories are inclusive, and they include everybody, and they try to lift everybody up. So one aspect of that is, of course, pride in Lincoln's LGBTQ+ heritage. And I will, as we know, this relates to the Duncan Grant mural at Lincoln Cathedral. And here we have the mural so Duncan Grant was a member of the Bloomsbury group who had very radical sexual relations for the time. And he drew this beautiful mural. But in this beautiful mural, which was hidden, obviously, because of homophobia, but also, can I just say, there is, like what you were saying, about there is a sort of a homoerotic oppression that happens within the image, especially too from the gaze of a white man. But this here was Patrick Nelson. And Patrick Nelson was Duncan Grant, one of Duncan Grant's lovers. And he was actually another war veteran. And here we see him this is another Duncan Grant. This is a beautiful, actually. I really love this image of Patrick Nelson by Duncan Grant, which is more, I just find it less impressive. He's got more clothes on. And yeah, I think it's, who would know that we have this image in Lincoln Cathedral? And through Reimagining Lincolnshire, we've been looking at our LGBTQ+ heritage and we've had all sorts of things. I mean, the library have just been absolutely brilliant on that, especially looking at our resources, and even historians, those who made our history, who are LGBTQ+, who aren't being recognised in the right way. And we had an event with Heritage Lincolnshire about this, and we will continue to build school resources and try and engage as much as we can in this history. Just to also note, I think it's important because we're talking about remembering Black veterans. So Patrick Nelson was a prisoner of war. He was from Jamaica, but he joined the British Expeditionary Force in World War II and was captured in France and spent most of the war as a prisoner. And you can actually view the letters between Duncan Grant and Patrick Nelson when he was incarcerated online. So, much time have I got? Okay. So the final question was about the war memorials and the church. Has anybody got a clue about this? No? Okay. They were all sculpted by this gentleman. His name is Mohammed Thomas Phillips. He was born in 1876 at the mouth of the Congo River in Banana. And his mother was Menina Barros, who was the daughter of a Cabinda chief, and his father was Richard Cobden Phillips, who was a controversial figure, kind of colonizer type. Yes, this is who sculpted those beautiful objects. And I will explain to you how this ties into the work that we're doing with Reimagining Lincolnshire. So one of our one of our targets of public engagement is engaging with the church and with Lincoln and Lincolnshire's churches, and trying to look at that church and parochial history in new and inclusive ways. And I'm sure that you've seen about it in the Daily Mail, hopefully not, or you've seen about it in the news. That there's so many debates going on about contested heritage within the Church of England. And the Church of England is has been extremely plugged into colonialism. Colonialism is continuous erasure. It's not just erasure at a point. And so for us, engaging in decolonising with the church, we must reimagine, recognise and reclaim. And through this, we believe that the local parish church can transform, and it can become a site for discussion, diversity and inclusion. And the church that you saw the chancel screen of, which is St. Chudge in Dunholm, is where we are actively doing this project, doing this research. Let me go back to Mohammed Thomas Phillips. So we visited the church, and we wanted to engage with them. I mean, the vicar is a very lovely and open-minded gentleman who wants to build a more inclusive sort of heritage story around his church. And we had we had a look at their literature and everything, and one of the pieces of information that came through to us was a church leaflet which said that the chancel had been designed by a black man called Mr. Phillips. And through that small piece of information, we have found that not only did he sculpt that, but through research with Lincolnshire County Archives, and I must thank Rob Waddington, who is one of our lead volunteers, who's done all this brilliant research, we found that this gentleman, who was born in the Congo, but lived a large proportion of his life in Stamford, worked for Bowman's, is actually one of this country's most prolific sculptors of that period in terms of churches and war memorials. And his work includes the St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, Peterborough Cathedral, Bradford Cathedral, Southwark Cathedral. He's worked with Sir Christopher Nicholson, some of the greatest architects of that time, and he is remembered effectively nowhere. So we are trying to tell his story, and not only are we trying to tell his story, through his story and through the story of the other people that I've mentioned, we can start to build representation. People can feel included, and that is so important to us when we want to have a city that is diverse and open to visitors and open to the world and open to international students, to their families. And so you can see how important that this work that the university is doing is. And also through doing this work with the church, we'll be doing a decolonising toolkit. We found his family, his descendants, and with his descendants, we'll be putting I've managed to find them on Wikipedia, and we're doing that. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to put these Lincoln stories on Wikipedia so that people can find out about them. And we will do a new church leaflet, and through Black History Month, we'll be having exhibitions about him, about the church. So that is, sorry, I'm quite passionate about Mohammed. This has become a little bit of an obsession with our project. But yeah, it's just atrocious how he has not been remembered, and also so many of these stories are not celebrated. But when we do celebrate them, even by doing this talk, I've told you all about this, and then you can think about ways to maybe include these case studies in your work, or have a chat about them when you're with your friends, or in lots of different contexts. And so we had a meeting with the vicar at St. Chad's. Was it? I have no sense of time, but it was sometime last week, and he gave us this really nice way to think about these stories. Stories like these give predominantly white congregations a way of talking about diversity, and realising that stories to do with empire and Black and brown people are all around them, but have just been hidden. So that's just the credits, the references. So just some sort of thoughts to take home about moving forward and our sense of meaning and place in terms of Lincoln, in terms of being a civic university, in terms of the county, and in terms of opening up to the world, being an international university. But you can only be an international university if you are an international city with an international history. So think about this. Can we alter our sense of space and community through diversifying heritage? Do you feel differently about Lincoln after I've put you to sleep? Can Lincoln be more welcoming to visitors, to international students? How can we use these stories, and how can we continue to research the city's diverse heritage to build on the university's one community values? And post Black Lives Matter, how can we continue to build representation in our city's spaces? So, yeah, I don't know if do you want to have a bit of a chat about that? Or, yeah. Or,
So I think first of all, we ought to thank you for the presentation. And yeah, open the floor up for any questions, observations, reflections.
comments.
I knew I'd seen Stevie Wonder at the lecture. That was fantastic, this work, foregrounding. When you said the church is plugged into colonisation, did you mean they're plugged into the critique of colonisation, or they're just colonised?
That's a very. So I'll answer as an employee. So the way that we see it is that the church is part and parcel. The growth of the Church of England is part and parcel with the growth of the British Empire. So whether that's a positive force or a negative force, you can't separate those two things, because essentially it was God's empire. But at the moment, what's happening is that there's reviews about this. I mean, brilliant, you know, you saw the archbishops take a stand in terms of the flight to Rwanda, and actually the Church of England are becoming more and more open to engage with the diverse past. But my question for you and for everybody as a scholar is, well, how can we support the church in doing this? And if they aren't supportive to these actions, how can we engage with them to say, you know, we've got this heritage, we've got this all these amazing stories that are rooted in empire. If it wasn't for the British Empire, would have Richard Cobden Phillips have gone to the Congo? No, he wouldn't, possibly, but I mean, it's highly unlikely. So, yeah, sorry, I think you were going to say something.
No, but I'm not British, so I will not say anything about it. But in the Netherlands, the church was so crucially important in the whole colonial history through legitimizing the whole colonial project. As in, we're going there, we are going to Christianize these people, and we are going to build schools and infrastructure, and so both for people at home. So. And the church is only getting so slowly to grips with its own past, and it's in this constant denial, and it's so much part of like pedophilia in the Catholic Church. It's so much inherently part of the church itself. It just cannot dissociate itself from its past because it's still so much there. I think. At least in the Netherlands, I'm not going to say anything about it.
So I guess your project's part of their confessional.
Well, to be honest, we're not, I mean, for the philosophy sort of behind our project, we're not saying, okay, we can accept what's happened. Well, we can't accept, but we can talk about and we can reconcile about what's happened in the past. But what's really important is to look at how there has been that diversity there and look at ways that we can then build on that to think about ensuring that we can have these stories, that we can then build an inclusive society, inclusive religion or not religion or whatever. And through that, then hopefully you don't have, you know, the rise of racism or empire or whatever. So it's just it's a slow process, but I believe it's worthy. I mean, it's not. I mean, what else are we going to do? Just let the churches crumble down? They're in such disrepair. And this is a way that we can say, well, look, this history's here.
First, Joanna and then John. I think you could have been waving first, but I was looking in the other direction.
Two things that just come to mind. One is on the back of Ted's comments about confession. Quoted, buried in my PhD thesis, a quote from Charlotte Lind, a linguist. Confession is good for the soul, but it's also great for the self-identity. So actually there could be something around revisiting that contested and difficult history and difficult heritage in terms of confessing, whether it's literal confession or just admitting either a shame, guilt, sin, call it what you like, and then revisiting that. And it could be, marketeers in the room, you know, a form of rebranding as well, and how that navigates. But one of the things that struck me in terms of that working in partnership with churches, and of course Lincolnshire is famous for its churches, having moved back to Lincolnshire fairly recently and being out in the sticks in Digby and having a gorgeous little church in this tiny little hamlet and you know, walking the trails during my lockdown months, is the concept of parish and being a parishioner and belonging to a locality. And how that might work with engaging people, but also looking back, also looking forward and how people can write their future and be part of a parish and open that for the future, but bringing in these hidden legacies. So I think that's actually a positive, exciting thing with a structural network and a structural construct, whether we like it or not, that could maybe be used in a positive way. And I'm a relatively new, I wouldn't say convert to the Church of England, but engager with the Church of England more broadly. And I've never come across the concept of parish before, and I think that is something that I actually quite like. And it brings in everyone, and that sort of transitional relationship with churches that people might have, you know, the hatch, match and dispatch kind of role of churches at key life events, whether you're particularly a believer or not, could actually be extended to make some of this work.
Yeah, and on that, when we were at Dunholm the other day, we just mentioned, they were saying, oh, we have this vinyl night, and we mentioned the stories about Jimi Hendrix, about Stevie Wonder, about the black music legacy, which was very key to also the mod culture of Lincolnshire. And they said, oh, let's have a black music night in Black History Month. So, and it seems, I mean, the Reverend Adam Watson is very plugged into doing that, sort of engaging not just with the parish, but with, sort of other religious bodies and also the local community, the local church, and really trying to bring people together. We're seeing it in action.
John.
First of all, thank you, Heather, for bringing such a discussion to the fore, because these are things that we would not have in other normal sets of circumstances be listening to or hearing being discussed. I'm struck by a couple of things. One is that some of us come from this type of background that we are talking about, in the sense that the church, on reflection, has been quite a very instrumental tool in cementing colonialism and colonialist type mentality outside of the UK. And I'm talking about in most parts of the Africa propagated by the Italian Roman Catholic Church. It was only subsequently, when some of us had gone through a certain type of journey and a journey of discovery, that we started reflecting back and seeing that actually we were under some form of colonialism in a very paternalistic, very kind of, we are doing this for the good of the people like you, John. Yeah? So it is good that we are recognizing that kind of role that the church has played on this side of the border. But strangely enough, and in a very paradoxical way, back in most parts of Africa, the church is still playing a certain, very low-key type of role in still propagating a certain level of colonial mentality. But the people back home, or in most parts of those areas, are still seeing them as the civilizing, good guys types of people. But you could understand because of the level of poverty, because of the social deprivation and all the rest of it. But it is nice to see that there's a very distinctive paradox between engaging in the discussions here and recognizing them for what they are and trying to see what other types of alternative narratives might be possible. Whereas on the other side of other parts of the world, that discussion hasn't even started. So thanks.
No, thank you.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, how do you think there's a way to engage with that discussion?
By that, I'm simply implying that this type of work has greater scope than you might even think.
Okay, I am going to take the opportunity of that pause for thought to bring matters to a close and thank Victoria again. That was a great.
Thank you.
I'm going to out myself as one who is none of you are going to be surprised.